Welcome to Season 1 of the Sponsorship X podcast. This season's all about ROI. And today we have Episode 4, Fan Sentiment as a Metric. Have you ever thought about fan sentiment as one of the metrics that you utilize in your sponsorship and partnerships? Well, you're going to hear all about this today in this podcast that I get to moderate, featuring Chris Schoengut from the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival, Cindy Medynski from Explore Edmonton, and Kyle Simons from JPMorgan Chase. So, sit back, have a listen. You might want to listen to it a couple of times. We're about to discuss fan sentiment as a metric. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Harrison, the founder of Sponsorship X, here at the ROI Forum for another amazing podcast. We're going to be talking about fan sentiment and fan engagement and fandom and how come I have no fans. So I've got an amazing panel here today who have all studied word for word the script that was sent to them multiple weeks ago by one of my colleagues, which I'm really excited about because that means 3 of the 4 panelists have read the script. So guess who has not? Look at those evil eyes. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to start off with you, Kyle. Just kind of give us a name, rank, and serial number, and then we're going to jump right into it.
Serial number?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. You've got a UPC code in your back. Did you know that?
That's right. I've got a couple codes, both Canadian and American.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're bicodal.
I am. Hi, everyone. Kyle Simons from JPMorgan Chase. I lead entertainment and talent for the firm. Everything from our music partnerships through any artist that you would see on screen, ranging from our Kevin Hart partnership, comedy, to anything, also film, comedy festival. So really excited to be here and talk about fan sentiment, which is central for our business.
Is there anything funnier in the world when Shaq picks up Kevin Hart? Like, that's just...
Yeah.
There is?
Maybe.
This just makes me laugh every day. Yeah. Welcome. Chris.
Yeah, Chris Schoengut, brand director of brand and partnerships with the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. The festival itself has been around since 2021, but our company, Trickstar Live's been around for 19 years now.
Congratulations. Anything funny you want to share with us?
I'll save the dad jokes for later.
All right. Amazing. Nice to see you, Cindy.
Hi, everyone.
Are you feeling outnumbered on this mantle?
I love it.
Okay.
This is where I thrive.
All right, good. Yeah.
My name's Cindy Medynski. I am the Director of Sport and Culture Events for Explore Edmonton. So my role, along with the team in Edmonton, is to attract major sport and culture events to our city.
Amazing. Welcome. Let's start off with a little kind of personal segue, hear a little bit about who you are. I'm going to throw it back to you, Cindy. Tell us your journey. Like, let's get to know you a little bit. And don't forget, this is going to be broadcast globally. So we want all the really juicy stuff, like the most embarrassing moment of your life, the funnest moment of your life, how you got your job.
You got it. So I'm a born and raised Edmontonian and had grown up playing sports my entire life. Volleyball, basketball. Yes, basketball. I'm only 5'4", but I still played up to junior high. Diving, softball, you name it. Really big sports gal. And Edmonton was always such a really great place for that and for, young girls participating in sport. So where my journey started, I guess, to where it got me here today is in 2001 was a really big year for Edmonton. We hosted the World Athletics Championships as well as the International Triathlon Union World Championships. So 2 massive events within 1 month of each other. So great chance for our city to shine. And I volunteered for a triathlon, and that's where I met Simon Whitfield. He had just come off of the Sydney Olympics.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Starstruck. Canadian hero. He just come off the Olympics, won a gold medal, made history for Canada, debuting triathlon on the Olympic program. It was pretty special. And I think that was one of the first, sort of I remember moments that sport, gave to me. Just a year later, 2002, we hosted the Under-19 Women's World Championships through FIFA. And again, being able to be a part of that event in Commonwealth Stadium, a young Christine Sinclair, Aaron McLeod, who's from St. Albert, a 16-year-old Marta, incredible. And I think that's where I became a fan myself. So it's really great to have this sort of full circle moment. Now fast forwarding to 2015, serving on the FIFA Women's World Cup organizing committee, really being able to be a part of that tournament and history in a different way. And then 8 years ago, started with Explore Edmonton, and now I get to sell my city to the world.
And like you can just hear the passion oozing in your voice, so it's an easy sell. And we were fortunate enough to have a sponsorship conference along with the Women's World Cup in 2015. And you mentioned Christine Sinclair, and she did me a solid. We had our delegates at the China match, and she scored the winning goal right in front of our delegates. And the delegates thought that I was somehow magical or a match fixer. But and Christine Sinclair will be around later today. I know this pod's going to be broadcast later, but we will be seeing her later today. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, so I started my career in events just volunteering out of college. Went to a technical school in Edmonton, took digital media, which has changed crazily now. A lot of the stuff that I took in school doesn't exist anymore, such as Flash. Did some web programming and stuff like that, and then just started volunteering at events. Sort of got the bug that way, and then started a business coming out of college through that. And we did everything from like speaker series to radio station events. The Big Valley Jamboree we were involved with for 13 years. Anything from like tours with William Shatner to Gary Vaynerchuk speaker series to cool concerts and Red Bull Crashed Ice, things like that. So our journey has changed quite a bit over time. Now our core focus is really on the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. So we launched that property in 2021, and the growth of that has just been pretty incredible throughout the years since then.
Cool. Kyle.
Hi. So born and raised in Toronto, but I now live in New York City. My journey started with, I went to Laurier, political science, thought I was going to be a lawyer, realized very quickly, not part of my journey.
I took political science too in undergrad.
Yeah,
but I can't spell lawyer, so I didn't even think about it. Yeah. Two poli-sci grads and one
two
podcast.
Poli-sci, yeah, exactly.
There must be a bad joke in there somewhere.
I know. But then after that, I loved sports. I actually wanted to become a journalist. I did a number of unpaid internships. I worked for a company called Cosmo Sports, and my first ever foray into sponsorship was I sold Georgian Downs horse racing to a what do you call them? Someone who stuffs animals.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
taxidermist.
Taxidermist. Thank you. To a taxidermist, and it was interesting because he
or
actually
a chef.
became.
I don't know.
That was when I realized, right. Exactly. But I realized relationship management was something I really loved because I ended up becoming this guy's therapist.
Right.
To the point where he was calling his mother was sick and his dog passed away. We ended up getting the deal done, but I was like, okay.
Well, just stuff the dog. What
exactly.
do you put your skills to work here?
Exactly.
Pal. Yeah.
But that was my first foray into wanting to be on the sponsorship side, and I moved around. I had the opportunity to work on the agency side.
Hold on, I'm gonna interrupt you because you just stole my next question.
Uh-oh.
So somebody's read the script, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to tell us what the value of that first sponsorship was that you sold? Do you remember?
I think it was like a $2,000 or $3,000 deal.
$2,000 to $3,000. Okay,
exactly.
That's amazing. Keep going.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to everybody on their first deal. But I love that.
Yeah, and so then I was working the agency side and had the opportunity to open the office in New York. So moved down. I was overseeing the AB InBev Global account. Married an American. Had the opportunity now to stay. I've been there for 9 years. I was on the alcohol side prior to this, so I worked at Pernod Ricard overseeing our North American sponsorship portfolio, which is an amazing experience, and had the opportunity to then move over to banking, decided to diversify, and now I have the privilege of leading our entertainment and talent portfolio, so everything from our music festivals through our venues, which is a significant part of what we do, and it's been a great journey so far, a year in, and still learning as we go.
Congratulations. And are you able to sign any $2,000 sponsorships at JPMorgan Chase?
Yes, we can, but
people ask for a little more.
That's later on.
People
we'll
ask
talk
for a little
about the
more.
community partnerships later.
Absolutely. Chris, first sponsorship ever sold to who, how much, and what sort of therapy did you have to provide afterwards? Was that in the contract?
Follow up with that guy.
Yeah.
One of the first interesting ones for sure that I was involved with start to finish was Service Credit Union was the title sponsor of our Grit series with Gary Vaynerchuk. Originally, that event was supposed to happen on March 20th of 2020. So we all know how that happened.
So it's your fault.
Let's push it 1 week, and then let's push it 2 weeks, and let's push it 6 months, and let's push it a year. And eventually we got it off the ground, but it was a very interesting one because nobody knew what the heck was going on and how long we were going to have to push that. And I think their dollar was happy because we just had to keep spending more on marketing and relaunch it. But it was a cool one to get off the ground finally once things opened back up, and was a really cool fit with them on that side of things. So
congrats. Love it. Cindy, do you remember your first sponsorship?
I was really in the sponsorship fulfillment side early
it.
in my career. A few people in the room working with them on that. I think, when you're dealing with rodeo, for example, in Canadian Finals Rodeo, there's no rules to fulfillment. You just kind of go with the flow. And that was a wild ride. But I think in the context of the work I'm doing today, in attracting events and sort of selling the city and securing those deals that way, my very first interaction was actually around Junos, which is quite timely. So in 2017, the first conversations with Karis and Alan Reed and how are we going to get this back to Edmonton? It's been, over a decade. It was 2004 since we last hosted, and they were motivated to come to Edmonton. We obviously really wanted them back. And then, you throw in some provincial funding conversations, an ice district construction, 2 maternity leaves for myself, and a global pandemic. There was a lot of barriers, a lot of speed bumps. But finally, we were able to confirm it and host it in 2023. And that was, one of the most successful Junos to date. So really proud about that.
Congratulations. And how old are the kiddies now?
5 and 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And no more.
Okay, well, I didn't ask that. Just for the record, okay? Things men are not allowed to ask. Chris, let's jump right now into, I want to really talk about fans and fan sentiment and fan engagement. And maybe we could just start with like your own personal definition of what you see as like fan sentiment and how do you in your day-to-day work tap into that?
Yeah, from our side of things, it's basically from the events that we're producing, is it hype or gripe? Do they like it or do they not like it? And from the sponsorship side of things, that really reflects directly on top of if they have a positive sentiment towards our event, then they've got positive sentiment towards that brand that is involved with it. When we first set up the Comedy Fest in 2021 and looked out at the tables and we were like, what the heck are we doing here? It was super interesting and humbling when we had our first comedy show, just how quiet the crowd was and how respectful the crowd was. And we had Nikki Glazer and David Spade headlining that year, and they came up to us after and they were like, oh, you guys built the world's biggest comedy club and you should tour this. And we were like, all right, so it can work. We've had a lot of pivots and a lot of changes and a lot of, I like to say we're always in beta. We're not just going to keep putting the same thing forward and we're always fixing things, but it's been pretty cool, like I said earlier, to see the growth of this, and just super proud of our team for the effort they've put behind it and the trust that our team and our partners and everybody has put behind it.
So let's go deeper on fan sentiment specifically. And you made a great comment there. You said hyper gripe, so probably a marketing professor would call that net promoter score. But I like the fact. So how do you make sure that you're on the hype side versus the gripe side? Let's talk really specifically about fans.
I think for us, it's just listening, and that's become so much easier now with social media that is at their fingertips to say, do they like it or not immediately, fan polls, just listening and understanding that we need to listen to our fans 365 days a year, not just for the 3, 4, 5 hours that we have them on site.
Got it. And Cindy, you talked about selling this your birthplace, your home. What is the role of emotion in selling Edmonton? And I know that you travel the world personally, talking to the biggest properties in the world. You're trying to get them to understand Edmonton. Give me the pitch. Give the room the pitch. Edmonton. You need to come to Edmonton because our people are what the city is. This. What's the emotional pitch?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it that way because traditionally it's always been, we have these venues, we have the funding, we've got some of those foundational pieces in place, but what sets Edmonton apart, right? And that's what we try to communicate. And really, it's the people and it's the community coming together. And we have to make sure as Explore Edmonton and the City of Edmonton that we are facilitating that. And, we just did a presentation in October in Switzerland, and it wasn't your typical sales pitch. It was around the Oilers playoffs and how electric the atmosphere was and what you can expect in Edmonton for other events, and how do we work to bottle up that excitement, that emotion, that fan sentiment, and really expand it across to all of our other events. So that fan sentiment for me and selling Edmonton is also twofold. You think about the visitor on the tourism side. That's my mandate: attract visitation to the city. We also need to make sure that the client is happy, but we also need to work to make sure the citizen is happy and in building that civic pride. So if our citizens are also a part of these experiences, that's only going to help us attract more events.
Yeah, and you see it, right? Like you talked about some of the things that Edmonton's hosted that have been unbelievable in terms of attendance and record tickets sold and like groundbreaking innovation, outdoor hockey games, women's championships, track and field. So when you're talking to somebody from Edmonton and you're like, hey, we're in Switzerland selling our city, what do they say to you? Like, what do they say? Like if I just walked up to the street and said, what did you do last week? Oh, I was in Switzerland pitching the city.
No, well, first of all, Switzerland is like a total wild card. People are like, what's in Switzerland? And they don't know that it's the Olympic capital. They don't know that all of the international federations are there. So it's a bit of that education piece, but in all honesty, I think Edmonton has, still a bit of a perception problem, and that's what we're trying to change. And even locally, we're trying to change the minds of people that live here and say, like, this is an amazing city to be a part of. Just go out and experience it. And we want them, to be our ambassadors to say, yeah, Edmonton is a great place to live, work, play, visit, whatever. So there's some surprise that Edmonton even has a tourism office.
Right.
But we have to work that much harder, and we do.
If you're like most sponsored marketers, ROI probably keeps you up at night. That's why the Sponsorship X ROI Forum in Vancouver was such a big success. And now you can access 17 sessions from that conference on demand for just $299 Canadian. Go to the Sponsorship X Forum website and go to ROI Forum on demand. And there you'll find masterclasses, workshops, keynotes that will inform you about everything from ROI versus RO, valuation versus evaluation, fan sentiment as a metric, so you can sharpen your saw and up your game when it comes to ROI. These valuable resources not only include the presentation on stage, but also an opportunity for you to focus right in on the deck if you don't want to actually watch the on-stage presentation. So roll up your sleeves, time to learn, time to take advantage of this opportunity to apply these key lessons to how your organization tackles ROI in sponsorship marketing. I'm going to come back to both you and Chris to kind of get some examples of how you put fan sentiment literally into a presentation so that folks listening can think about how they harness it. But, Kyle, from your standpoint, you're in a category where maybe if you start walking around the office and talking about fan sentiment, people might look at you like a little bit strange. So tell us how that impacts you. And you've been growing the entertainment portfolio, which again, at first blush is not a natural, right? And you've worked in all aspects of this business, but talk to us what your definition of fan sentiment is, and then how do you apply that as JPMorgan's looking at properties and partnerships?
Yeah. So in sports and entertainment, for us, it's really about fortifying our brand. And as you mentioned, banking in general is a very emotional decision for fans and for consumers. You're trusting us with your livelihood. You're trusting us with making big decisions as the biggest bank in the world, in the U.S. For us, it's how do we
You can say the world.
I think, there's technically some banks in China that are bigger.
Okay.
But,
all right. All right.
we don't, and also, anyways, we're not going to go there.
Okay.
We're not going to go there.
But this is being recorded.
For us, it's how do we connect with fans to create passion? How do we find ways, depending on the line of business that we're promoting, whether it's the retail bank, to connect fans with what they love? To your point, for entertainment, it's new for the bank. Chase is a very conservative bank. It's a bank that's been around for 150 plus years. To find ways to connect with consumers, especially younger consumers, was a big focus for us. Thus, why we're making the investment into the entertainment space. And fan sentiment is how do we create consideration for what we're doing? And younger consumers are very, they're very skeptical of banks. We're starting to see the rise of fintech, which is a space that we haven't seen, especially in the US. We have Chimes of the world, Cash App, which doesn't technically have a brick and mortar. So for us, as a conservative, bigger brand, how do we resonate with consumers in a way that's going to help push the needle, but also find ways to connect with consumers even on site? And that's how we've really leveraged fan sentiment to say, not only do we need to know where we want to be, i.e. entertainment is a space we're growing in, but how do we actually connect with consumers on site? And whether that's through concession benefits, through money can't buy experiences, which has been a big focus for us. So we do leverage a lot of that fan sentiment information to just know how to connect with our consumers. But when it comes to the conversation in the office, to your point, we do get a lot of, why are we here? Why do we need to do this? And again, we're really showing that we're making the inroads when it comes to consideration lift and perception. And that for us is really important as we think about how we can break through, not just on the quantitative side, but qualitative as well.
And I just want to go back on your comment about fintechs. Is it fair to say that for emerging cohorts of customers, that a fintech actually has a bit of a advantage because they don't have the legacy? Like, is there a perception from that consumer, like, well,
yeah,
like you made the comment, like, these people don't even have bricks and mortar. And is that an advantage for a fintech, say, against an established?
I think it's really interesting. And again, it's all about the consumer that we're trying to reach. And so what we're seeing is the way that we deem them, they're called starter segments. So those who are just beginning their financial journey don't necessarily have the preconceived notion of how they should be investing their dollars. Yes, there's the idea of a lot of people just bank where their parents bank, but especially in the US with fintech, there's just new ways that these brands are connecting with consumers in a way that resonates with them. Like Cash App's been doing some really great stuff with on the artist front. There's just new ways that they're connecting, and again, I think it comes back down to new ways of connecting with consumers, and a lot of the legacy banks have had a challenge to do that in the past. So for us, it's really about how do we take learnings from what is happening in the fintech space. And JPMorgan Chase is so big that we do have an emerging fintech space. So it's been a really interesting exercise to find ways to connect our lines of business across and reach consumers in different ways.
I love that. Starter segments. I'm going to keep that in mind. Anybody sending an email in, subject line, I can help you talk to your starter segments. Exactly. So Chris, I want you to put fan sentiment in a deck for me, and not just your deck, but advice for the listener. How do you take this sort of hyper gripe and put it in a deck? You're talking to a sponsor.
That's tough. With a lot of our strategies, it's everything is custom for every different partner, and every measurement is different. And one of the hardest things is like, how do you measure emotion? How do you measure laughter? I know I talked about yesterday that the laughter is the best medicine. I know it's cliche to say, but it's very, very true. It's science, and you can't argue science. There are some cool technologies coming out. I know the Intuit Dome in LA, they actually have audio readers in every single chair, so they can tell where the loudest fans are, if they're cheering for something, if they're laughing for something. That'll help with A, measuring that side of things, and B, if they're looking for the loudest fans on camera or anything, instead of having people looking for hours and hours at a time, they can just get pinged. Oh, seat D6, this guy's being loud, let's get a camera over there, and things like that. So I think with technology, there's going to be a lot of new exciting ways to measure sentiment, but for us right now, it's kind of the basics. It's trying to get feedback on socials, feedback through surveys, and just incentivizing people to participate in those, because a lot of times if you have a negative sentiment, you're going to hear about it.
Right.
If you have a positive one, sometimes you will. If you meet their expectations, you probably aren't going to hear about it. That's what they came in expecting, and they're like, great, that was awesome, I left smiling. So it's how can we just make sure that our goal is to exceed expectations at all times and leave them with something that makes them think about and resonates with them and makes them remember.
Yeah, so telling the partner the hype list is maybe not going to be as long as the gripe list, but finding other tools to say, this is how we're going to bring
exactly,
that.
Yeah.
And Cindy, how do you bottle up emotion? And literally, as your team, you're preparing a presentation, you're thinking, again, I'm sort of taking this emotional thing, almost making it boring and forcing you to answer, like, where is it in the presentation? Is it in the deck? Is it the video? Is it the way you present? Is it in the follow-up? Like, how do you package up emotion for a business pitch? Yeah.
First of all, that audio chair freaks me out because I have the loudest, most obnoxious laugh. Maybe you'll hear it later, but I think... Is
this the time we should actually confess to you, without your permission, we've actually put those sensors on these chairs?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, can't wait. Yeah. Make me laugh. Then.
Yeah. All right. Somebody make Cindy laugh.
Yeah. I think for us, it's about that storytelling piece, right? Mm-hmm. And making sure that, you talk about how you're going to hear about the bad things and sometimes you hear about the good things. We have to be the ones who are pulling out those good stories and providing a platform to share them. So then when we're, speaking, whether it's to rights holders directly or more of that mainstream, media side of things, we can lead with that emotional connection. The economic impact is always going to be there. That story, not many people really care about at the end of the day. Like it's a symptom of the event coming through. But if we can tell that story and honestly lead with like personal stories too.
And authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something Edmonton prides itself on, is that authentic connection. And again, being born and raised Edmontonian, I can draw on my personal experiences. And I think when you're building relationships, like people really like that. And I think at the international federation level, they're not used to that. So it's kind of a surprise when you can, be vulnerable, but also, good at your job.
Right.
And it's the city of champions. I know Toronto, you two Toronto guys don't know too much about that, but Edmonton will always be the city of champions.
Dude.
Nice.
Wow. Is he upset about the last question I asked him, or where did that come from? So when I pull out, I was born in Ottawa, raised in Aurelia, conceived in Calgary. But that's TMI.
Didn't see that coming.
What's that?
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks, Chris.
So I'm completely distracted now, but I'm going to go back to Cindy and say, so draw me that straight line, or curvy line, if you will, from emotion to economic impact. Because yes, you're filling out the RP, all those things, but there's a connection, right? Which is, you talked about being like the brand value of Edmonton and what people there and people coming and experience that emotion is a direct line to that economic impact. So how do you draw that line in a presentation?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a long line too, building that over years, but when we're thinking about why people want to be a part of an event, why people invest in an event, the why is always the emotional piece. And if you can encourage them on that front versus saying, come out and support your local visitor economy, or come to Edmonton to spend money in our hotels, like that's not the message, right? But that's often the final result. So if you start with that emotional piece and you start with that connection and again, the why, right? Why are we all doing this? Why are we all here? Why do we care? That economic piece follows through.
Kyle, as a fellow loser, could you help give us some insights on...
It's tough.
No kidding. And you're in New York. There's some... Actually, when was last time? New York wins lots of stuff. I don't want to be the governor of Florida right now and bring up Game 7, but
Yeah.
But let's get on track. How do you measure fan sentiment? How do you talk to your partners about that? How do you then translate that internally? And not to put you on the spot, but look, at the end of the day, you work for a for-profit business. So everything you do has to ladder up to conversion, consideration, acquisition, lifetime value of customers. Take us, what's your version of that line that I was just talking to the others about?
Yeah, to your point, Cindy, it is a long-term play for us. There's obviously immediate impact that we can measure, whether it's on-site from a consideration perspective. Are we just moving the needle on trust? But really, to your point, it is a long range. And as we're looking at the impact of a bank, it's not necessarily you're going to put all your money into a new account, or you're not going to open up a home lending in the immediacy. So being able to be top of mind, being able to drive that awareness, consideration, and it needs to be repetitive is important for us. So it does start with how do we, in general, create awareness for what we're doing, our message, be authentic, and then drive through the line. So as we think about sentiment, for us, we measure everything, and it's really important both from a first-person data, and internal. Honestly, we have a research team of over probably 200 people whose job is to constantly be tracking.
Are we all jealous right now?
Yeah, right. No, but it's interesting, right? Because as a company of our size, it's great to have those resources, but at the same time, there's so much scrutiny as we look across all the marketing channels, as we look across how are we actually making direct impact. These are significant investments for everyone. So there is that narrative of, yes, we are generating profit, we are generating card spend, we are moving the needle as it pertains to customer redemption. But then at the same time, how are we building long-term love for a brand where, again, banking and financial service is such an emotional thing. So, for us, we are looking at first-person data. We have constant surveys in the marketplace. Social listening is so important. Earned media for us. We're really leaning into the digital space.
Yep.
I mean, Chase doesn't have a massive social following. Like if you were to watch us, but we lean in on our properties, and we're really leaning in on how can we create and connect with their fan base. Because to your point, as long as we can, connect and we're authentic, we're hopefully going to build upon the success of our partnership. So that's really important for us.
So I love that. And at the risk of sound like I've never been in a marketing room before, define for people who are listening, what first-person data is.
Yeah, so that's data that we're collecting either on site, we're collecting internally. We do leverage our property data as well. So as we're kicking off any partnership, as we're creating accountability both for us and others, we do encourage our partners to be collecting data on site. But for us, it's really investing in how can we talk to consumers directly. And it's an investment, and we're not. The beauty of why I love my job is we're not selling in the importance of research. Like, candidly, Chase believes in that.
Yeah.
And so, I do love the fact that we are investing so heavily, and we prioritize the fact that we have to be able to prove that every dollar going in is coming back. And it's not necessarily going to be immediate. It is that long-term play.
And, Chris, while I recognize you don't have a 200-person research department, you guys are an entrepreneurial business, but you actually understand and really lean into data, and you've shared some of your thoughts before. So I'm going wildly off script here, as I can tell by the look you're giving me. But I want you to talk a little bit about, like, how do you then harness that data to then talk to partners? Because I know it's an area that you have an expertise in.
An expertise might be a big word, but we've dipped our toes into it for sure.
It's a bigger word than loser. You called me. There's going to be no forgiveness in this pod.
But I think a lot of it is just about sharing data, and I know that there's privacy concerns with a lot of that, but there's a new thing, not a new thing, but a new thing that will be the forefront will be data clean rooms, where partners can share overlaps in that data or their experiences or things like that with those partners.
Explain data clean rooms to, like, pretend you're talking to my mom. She's 89.
It would be, so just from our festival perspective, for example, we would have all the customer data from our ticket purchasers, and then we would have another overlapping set of data from our bar sales on Square. So then we could say, okay, I know Mark drank 4 Budweisers when he came to the festival. So with that overlapping data, then I know he's a beer drinker, and we can give that data to our friends at Labatt or Molson or whomever, and give them a certain target audience to target certain ads to, or things like that on Google or Meta or wherever. Or hotel room properties if they're staying at one place, or restaurants. So it's really working collaboratively with who you might think are competitors, but just sharing more data in a private way. So even like other events, like when we come to cities, we're doing a really cool promotion in Edmonton called Eat, Play, Laugh. So it'll be where instead of us coming in as competitors to other events going on at the same time, we're actually working together with them and saying, okay, for $59, you can get a comedy festival ticket, 10 tickets to Taste of Edmonton, and a 10-day ride pass at K-Days. And as event promoters, we can then share some of that data with who overlaps on that stuff without saying, like, here's our customer database, because obviously you can't do that.
No, but that's brilliant. So you have those 3 partners. In the middle of that triangulation is the buyer, right? The fan. As a marketer, you're often told, listen to your customer. Sometimes they're going to tell you what they want. Other times they're going to give you clues of what you want. That's why me and the Sponsored X team have created what we're calling SPX Basecamp. This is a high elevation experience for marketing leaders. If you're responsible for growth and brand development in your organization, or perhaps you're an entrepreneur, or perhaps you're a change maker, then Basecamp is for you. August 14th to 16th in Whistler, British Columbia. You're not going to come into a setting with keynote presentations and lots of PowerPoint. In fact, there aren't going to be any screens. You're going to work together collaboratively with your peers. You're going to be guided by expert facilitators who are consultants and thought leaders from around the world. And you're going to sit down and face this opportunity to decide, what is your future going to look like? How are you going to get your organization there? And how are you going to personally reinvent yourself to make sure that happens? August 14th to 16th, Whistler, British Columbia. Sign up today, sponsorshipx.com/basecamp. So what are you tapping into when you think about the sentiment of that fan? Who's the persona you're after with that collab?
I think just like event goers in a sense, people that like getting out of the house, whether it's for sport, whether it's for comedy, whether it's for music. There's a big overlap in a lot of that side of stuff. And then you can just start to segregate that into, okay, these are beer drinkers, these are cocktail drinkers, these are people who may be privy to a staycation, or these are people that are coming in from out of town. So it just really makes that data more powerful and makes your marketing spend then way smarter, because you're not just blanketing it out to everybody. You're saying like, these are the exact people that I want to market to.
Cindy's over there smiling because that's the all Edmonton dream team here. Other examples of collabs like that happening in Edmonton, where you're kind of like looking at that power of leveraging, like, hey, we know this to your point. I think you said event goers are event goers. People want to get out of the house. Cindy, any other examples like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we strive for, is having that collaboration, all the time. I think about it in the sense of Explore Edmonton. We've got our sport and culture team, and we have our business events team. So how can we bring in major events and then pile on, a major conference? For example, Sponsorship X can come back to Edmonton one day, and
when Christine comes out of retirement, are we negotiating?
You stop calling us losers.
Was that a pitch? Yeah. Actually, I actually had JPMorgan as my lead partner. We were all set. I think we're just gonna go off and have a beer.
Yep.
Well, 4 Budweisers, it sounds like.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
But I think some of these innovative things that we can do to make sure that, again, we're collaborating. Or, you think about Canadian Finals Rodeo, for example. We have the rodeo fan, got that one locked down. So how do we now, branch out and figure out how we can bring in, an 18 to 25-year-old or somebody who has no exposure to rodeo and doesn't actually really care what's happening in the dirt, but can have this Western lifestyle experience in Edmonton too, and finding those
those are your starter segments, right? It's like Kyle was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And having, influencers as a part of that, and
right.
And just having these small connections that you can bring back to the event, and again, and drive ticket sales and drive interest and awareness.
Kyle, you made a great comment earlier about like your brand doesn't necessarily have a big social following, and I think one of the realities of social media, not to oversimplify it, is when it's erupted a lot of brands. Like we want to leverage our channels, but you made a great comment about how you leverage other properties' channels and work together. And maybe love for you to kind of, give some examples, or maybe give a bit of advice to folks who are listening who might actually be thinking about, how do I approach a big legacy organization, and how should I position our channels? And then I'm going to go to Chris and Cindy in here about kind of how they do that with partners. But love to hear you as a partner. What advice would you give, and maybe some examples?
Yeah, exactly. And for us, again, our social following is so limited. And I say limited, but it's all relative.
Actually, let's hear the numbers. How big is your social following?
So I think so the way that it works at Chase is we've got Chase Master Brand.
Yep.
I think we're 130,000 followers.
Okay.
Which is, again, significant, but
yeah.
by U.S. standards is not necessarily there. We also have a Sapphire channel, which is focused on one of our products, and then Chase Travel. So I think they're all in and around the 250 to 300,000 range, which again is great. But it's not necessarily the most engaging content per se.
Yeah.
I'll probably get fired for saying that. So sorry, social people.
Yeah.
But
it's good content.
It's good content.
Yeah.
And so, for us, for example, we do want to tap into our partner channels. And one of the examples I presented yesterday with our J. Cole partnership was, we know we can't necessarily resonate, and we have a hard time reaching what we call the underserved, the underbanked community. So as part of that partnership, one of the key components of our agreement was 2 or 3 posts on Cole's page as well as Dreamville, because he's got 7.8 million followers with a very, very engaged fan base.
That's more than I have.
Right? That's impossible.
I'm a little jealous.
That's impossible. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
We should pull up his numbers.
Okay.
But
I'll get my phone out.
Right. But for us, it was really important to tap into his channels.
Yeah.
One collaboration post, which a collaboration post means we post at the exact same time.
Yep.
Generated over 350,000 engagements for us. We averaged 20,000 per post. So for us, it was such an important way to reach that consumer, a very engaged consumer.
And what was the sentiment like on that? Since this is the pod is about fan sentiment.
Yeah. So what we did is we were tracking social listening, and we got a lot of love of saying, "Hey, thanks Chase for doing this. We had no idea that you're even in this space."
Mm-hmm.
For that particular case, we were providing access to a very affordable ticket for one of the most sought after shows of the year. So there was a lot of fan love that came through, and that was important for us to not only get the engagements, but to hear that fans were actually appreciating what we were giving to them, and hopefully we're bringing you into the Chase family to continue to look at that. So, as we're looking at new opportunities, as we're constantly evolving our existing partnerships, a priority for us is to lean into the social space, given there is ways that we can bring them into our funnel. We can now tie as social media continues to evolve, we can actually have a direct registration. We can direct people to our pages. Signing up for a banking account or anything now is easier. You don't have to go into the retail location.
Yep.
So, being able to collaborate in the most authentic way to get our message out, but then also lean into, like if we were to put a post out with the Great Outdoor Comedy Festival, how do we make sure that our message aligns with what you guys are saying? And we're not just saying, hey, sign up for a Chase account. It's let's find a way to do an authentic message that's going to resonate with your fans too. So,
Okay, Chris, answer the question.
yeah, how are we going to do it?
That was the proxy question. Go for
There
it.
we go.
Well, I was going to say social for a bank or for any financial institution is like probably one of the hardest things because like, why would I follow a bank?
And so regulated. That's the other piece too, is we are so regulated in everything we say. Every post that goes out takes at least 2 weeks to get our legal to review. We have ad tracks. Anything that goes live has to actually match what was submitted to the regulators. And if we go off at all, we then have to retract our post. So it's a constant journey. And what's really interesting, especially in our talent front, is we do want our talent, for example, Kevin, to post something authentic, but then we're always waiting. We're like, what's he going to post? And we've kind of given the authority to say, hey, I'm cash backing on my gas today, but he has to do it in a Kevin voice without, going off the rails and saying something that's going to be wild.
Can you do it in a Kevin voice for us?
I'm not good. I'm not even going to try.
You're not an impersonator?
No, I don't want.
So, Chris, back to you though. To your to the question that we're asking here is kind of how do you talk to partners? Mark Harrison brand trying to come to Edmonton, rehabilitate my image, and so you're gonna give me the pitch on how your social channels can help with my brand.
For us, it's just really aligning values. And I know we talked about that yesterday. So, when we're looking for partnerships or looking for collaborations, if that brand doesn't align with one of our 4 core values, we'd probably be wasting our time
What are your
chatting
4 core
in the
values?
first place. Mental health, arts and culture, sustainability, and connection. So if there isn't
And
an
being
overlap
nice
in
to
some of
Toronto.
those, yes, yeah.
City of Champions.
Yeah.
Well, the Edmonton gave it up, so maybe they'll.
Whose side are you on?
I don't know. He's in the middle. Technically, physically, he's in the middle.
switch
Anyway,
spots?
back to your values alignment.
Yeah, so that's kind of the first thing that we
Yeah.
look at, and if there is an alignment on that, then let's have a chat. If it's not, then honestly, we're probably both wasting our time with doing something because it'll come off as so unauthentic.
Yeah.
And to
Do
your
your
point,
fans know your values, or do they feel your values, or how do you engage them in your values?
I think we certainly could be better at it. We don't want to come across as just another promoter that's coming in and putting on a big show and walking out with a big check or anything like that. So it's something that we really try and give back to the communities that we get to visit and that we're fortunate enough to visit. So we work with a lot of local companies, create local jobs, and just really try and be authentic and immerse ourselves in the cities and in the communities that we do visit.
Cool. So I'm going to just do a little segue here before we go into a rapid fire. You've all talked a little bit about your backgrounds and journeys, but I want the one personal fan moment for you. Personally, personally. Cindy, starting with you. What is your favorite fan moment? Or if you want to say you haven't had it yet, you can. But if I get 3 of those, I'm going to ask to watch them again.
I'm sure there'll be more fan moments, but recently hosting the PWHL Takeover Tour, one of 9 stops. I think that was Edmonton's opportunity to shine, and we did all of this prep. It was a lot of work, a lot of coordination, very tiring, but getting into the arena and seeing dads and daughters there, and a neutral site is hard. For any cities, I mean, maybe not for Edmonton because Toronto was playing, but still, it was hard because, you who are you cheering for? And,
Right.
And but I think it was okay because there was this kind of calm in the arena, and everybody just in awe, like, wow, look at this, look at what's happening.
Right.
And teams traveling. I think the stats were around 50% of out of town of ticket buyers were out of town. And that's
amazing.
Huge. It's huge for that. So I think the PWHL game was
cool.
That I remember. moment.
Remind me, who did Toronto play?
Ottawa.
And remind me who won?
Toronto.
Sorry, could you say that a little louder, like into the microphone? Okay.
Gonna
Chris,
whisper it.
favorite fan experience.
Mine's a bit of a weird one, and it goes many years back.
That's shocking.
We were working with William Shatner and doing a cross Canada tour with him, and their team had told us that whoever runs his teleprompter is going to be his best friend.
Right.
And I was the most tech savvy one
Yeah.
on the team, so I was running his teleprompter, and there's 2 Chris's on the team, so I go by Guts from my last name.
Yeah.
And he grabbed me by the belly, and he's like, "Guts, my guy." And I was just like, "Okay, this is William Shatner." Like, we're in a hotel room, and that was like one I'll just never forget. He was like such a lovely guy and such a grandpa.
Yeah. No, I'm not actually going to grab your belly, just in case you were trying to, incentivize me there a little bit. Top bat.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm able to talk. No one's been grabbing me lately, but
Yeah.
I would say, so, from a personal perspective, and both actually happened at Lollapalooza, I went as a fan once, and I saw Metallica, and just being there and experiencing that, and I'd never seen them before. They were my favorite bands. There was a wave of emotions. I actually think I shed a tear at a concert, at a heavy metal concert, which was weird. But on a fan perspective, again, at Lollapalooza last year, Chapel Roan, it was the most amazing experience ever. She played at, I think, 4 o'clock, which is typically not the headliner.
Yeah.
And she had 100,000 people show up, and just watching the crowds and watching everyone just vibing with her, and she was having an emotional moment, and fans were having an emotional moment. I was having an emotional moment. It was just amazing to see it all come together. And as a brand, to be there, to be able to, tap into that moment, and in many cases we were giving our fans access to be able to even attend that, was really cool to be able to connect it all. That's why we do it, right? So
Cool. All right.
And what about you, Mark, before we go to the rapid fire?
my number one fan moment? I didn't study for this.
this moment right here.
I would say not in person, but yeah, this moment right here. Not really. Probably San Antonio Holmes catching the touchdown pass in the corner to beat the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, because I'm a massive Steelers fan. But I will actually say my personal, so I wasn't really a fan. Head coach for high school football team. We had lost in the regular season to a team 35-0, and they really humiliated us. And we beat them 16-7 in the city championship. And it was in the snow, and we scored on the first play. We ran an 87-yard bomb. But the next night was actually a sponsorship X in Vancouver. And the then commissioner of the CFL came to that event and presented me with a cake that congratulated me on winning. So there you go. Long-winded story. Yeah. Anyway, this podcast is now going to go for an hour and a half because I get to talk about me. Okay. Rapid fire. Summer Olympics, Winter Olympics. One word answer.
Winter Olympics.
Summer, winter.
Summer.
Summer.
There we go. What about the audience? Summer or winter? Yell it out. Okay, there you go. There's clearly. Front of jersey sponsorship or behind the scenes access? Cindy.
Behind the scenes.
Chris.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
What if the logo was on the back? Is that behind the scenes? Not really.
That's where I thought you were
Not really.
going.
Yeah, I know. NASCAR versus F1.
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 Would your answer have been the same pre-Netflix series? Yes or no?
I would have said I don't care about either.
Okay, but you do now. That's the power of fandom.
I mean, I love Talladega Nights, but F1, I'll always.
There you go.
Yeah, still F1.
Okay. This one's going to be really interesting to hear the answer. CFL versus NFL.
CFL.
NFL.
NFL.
There you go. Cindy's going to just
Yeah, maybe we're putting in a
I will
bid,
say,
I'm
I think
not
the
sure.
CFL game is a better game.
Yeah.
The NFL obviously just has the coverage, and but I actually do think CFL is a far better game.
Okay.
My best friend works for the CFL, so
There you
Got
go.
it.
I have
Shout
to say
out.
that.
Yeah, I get it. We have time for one more question, and this one's not a trick, but it's going to sound like a trick. Favorite WNBA team? WNBA team. Cindy.
Backing me in a corner with Toronto, always.
Could you say it louder, please?
Tempo.
There we go.
There you go.
Chris.
Ditto.
Ditto.
The new Valkyries, the Golden State Valkyries, which
Right.
is one of our partners.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I had the opportunity to teach Jess Smith when she was at Ohio University.
She is
president.
amazing.
She is.
Shout out Jess Smith.
Okay. If you don't know who Jess Smith is, if you're listening to this, please look her up online, and let's hope that she is the president of the United States in 2032, if not sooner. There you go. Listen, we are at time because you probably heard my little buzzer in my pocket go off. I don't know. I had that like supercharged sports thing going. Look, thanks you three for putting up with me. You might not believe me, but we actually covered every question on the script. We just did it in my own way. You were fabulous. And I want a little round of applause from our live podcast audience.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.